Okay, picture this. You're at like a really fancy dinner, and suddenly you look down and there's the bread plate maybe on the wrong side, and just all these different forks and knives. Do you actually know like exactly what to do, the proper way through that whole setup? It seems small, maybe, but mastering those kinds of step-by-step skills, knowing how to use knowledge in specific situations, well, that's kind of what we're digging into today.
Yeah, and what's really interesting isn't just if we learn the rules, say, for the fancy dinner table, but how the way we learn them affects everything else. How engaged we feel, how stressed out, even how confident we are about it.
Exactly. And to really get a grip on this, we've found a fascinating study. The official title is a bit of a mouthful, let me tell you. Multidimensional evaluation of an educational board game using real-time diagnostic procedure scaffolding. You get the idea. Basically, researchers looked at university students learning Western food service, think fancy table settings, and compared 3 different ways they learned it.
And for you, listening in, understanding what makes learning actually stick, and maybe even enjoyable. That's pretty crucial, right? Whether you're picking up a new hobby, trying to learn something for work, or maybe you just find how our minds work fascinating.
Absolutely. This study kind of lets us look under the hood of learning. It goes beyond just, who got the best score.
Yeah.
It looks at how involved the students felt, their stress levels, motivation, emotions, the whole package. So our mission today is really to unpack what this study found, to understand how these different learning methods, especially games, with and without extra help, built-in shape how we learn and how we feel about it. Okay, so let's dive in a bit. This subject, they were learning Western food service. It's not just memorizing stuff, is it?
No, that's right. It's a perfect example of something where you need both the steps, the procedure, like how to set the table and knowing when to use those steps, like which fork is for what. It's really about problem solving in context, not just rote memorization.
Right. So to figure out which method worked best, they split, 96 students into 3 groups. Can you walk us through those?
Sure. So group 1 was the mobile scaffolding game-based learning group. Big name, but basically, they played a board game about the food service stuff. But, and this is key, they also had a mobile app. Think of it like a digital helper. It gave them immediate feedback right as they played and like little multimedia bits to explain things if they got stuck.
Okay. So if they made a wrong move in the game, the app was right there saying, try this, or here's why.
Pretty much, yeah, instant insights. Then group 2 was the general game-based learning group. They played the exact same board game, but no app. Instead, their teacher would check their answers after each round and then give a bigger explanation after the whole game was done.
Okay, so still feedback, but delayed, not right in the moment like the first group.
Correct. And group 3, that was the video learning group. They learned by watching a video about, tableware, plate presentation. And then, like group 2, the teacher explained things afterwards, kind of the more traditional approach.
Right.
Comparison.
Got it. 3 different approaches. So the million-dollar question, how did they stack up? Let's start with the obvious learning effectiveness. Did they actually learn the material? Was one group way better?
Well, the first finding was that all 3 groups showed, real improvement. From the pre-test to the post-test, everyone learned something significant. But here's the interesting part. When they looked at the final test scores, there wasn't actually a significant difference between the 3 groups overall.
Huh. That is interesting. So whether they had the game with the instant feedback app, or just the game with teacher feedback later, or even just a video, their final knowledge level was pretty much the same. Makes you wonder about the impact of all that tech on just the final score, right?
That's a really key point. Maybe the headline isn't, "This method makes you score higher," but it's more about the journey of learning. And all those other things we mentioned, that feels important for anyone designing learning, Although the researchers did suggest that the instant feedback and the sort of learning in context you get with the mobile app, that could be really useful for designing future games, especially for learning step-by-step stuff, procedural knowledge.
Okay, so final knowledge was similar, but maybe the experience was different. And that mobile scaffolding approach might have potential for specific types of learning.
Yeah.
Right, let's talk about engagement then. The study measured flow. What exactly is flow in this context?
Flow is basically that feeling of being completely absorbed in what you're doing. When time just seems to fly by. You're fully concentrated, maybe even enjoying the challenge. It's being in the zone.
Oh, okay. Like getting lost in a really good book or project.
Yeah.
So how did the learning methods affect that in the zone feeling?
Well, they found that both of the groups who used the board game, the mobile app one and the general game one, they both experienced high levels of flow. And interestingly, there wasn't a big difference in the amount of flow between those two game groups.
That kind of makes sense. Games usually pull you in more than just passively watching a video.
Yeah, and they specifically scored really high on something called autotelic experience, which basically just means, was the activity itself fun? Was it rewarding just to do it? The high scores there suggest the game itself, the content, was inherently engaging. They liked playing it.
So the game wasn't just a means to an end, the learning tool itself was enjoyable, kept them interested.
Exactly. It suggests that game-based learning, especially with this kind of multi-dimensional support or scaffolding they talked about, can be really good for getting learners deeply involved and actually enjoying the process.
Okay, that's a big point for games. Now, learning new things, especially stuff with lots of rules, can feel stressful sometimes. The study looked at anxiety too, right? Learning anxiety. What came up there?
Yes, and this was pretty clear. Both groups that used the game showed a significant decrease in how anxious they felt about learning this material, comparing before and after the study.
Oh, wow. So playing the game actually made them less nervous about the topic.
Seems like it. But the group that just watched the video, no real change in their anxiety levels. This really suggests that the support built into the games, the scaffolding, even without the fancy app, helped reduce that anxiety you can get with this type of learning.
So it wasn't just fun, it was the help integrated into the game that calmed those learning jitters.
That seems to be the key takeaway, yeah. Having support within the game environment, whether it's instant or delayed, looks effective for lowering anxiety when you're tackling procedural stuff.
Okay, interesting. Let's switch gears slightly. Motivation. What makes us want to learn? They measured motivation at different times. Before, during, after.
That's right, 3 stages. And for the group with the mobile app, the instant feedback one, their motivation significantly jumped up while they were learning. And it stayed high afterwards, too.
So that real-time, you got it, or try this, really seemed to fuel their drive in the moment.
It certainly looks that way. That immediate reinforcement seems powerful for keeping learners going during the task. Now, compare that to the group with just the game, no app. Their motivation only really saw a significant increase after they'd finished the whole thing.
Huh. So the delayed feedback didn't provide that same mid-activity boost.
Apparently not. And the video group, no significant changes in motivation at any stage. So this really points to game-based learning, especially with that immediate feedback loop, being good not just for engagement, but for actually boosting and sustaining the desire to learn while you're doing it.
That instant feedback seems like a key ingredient for keeping motivation high during the learning process itself. Now, they also dug into emotions, specifically hope and anxiety, again across those 3 stages. Let's start with hope, which they link to confidence, right?
Yes, hope or confidence in their ability to learn the material. And here, both game groups reported significantly higher levels of hope compared to the video group. And that was true before, during, and after the learning.
Wow, so pretty consistently, using the games made them feel more confident about learning this stuff.
Right. And what's also interesting is that all 3 groups actually felt more hopeful or confident as they went along, from pre to mid to post learning. But the game groups started higher and stayed higher. It really backs up this idea that built-in support, the scaffolding, helps build and maintain that belief in yourself as a learner.
So games not only lowered anxiety, but also boosted confidence. That sounds like a winning combo.
Yeah.
What about the other side of the coin, anxiety again, but this time maybe nervousness about the activity itself?
Yeah, so before they started, both game groups actually reported feeling more anxious than the video group.
Oh, why was that?
Well, the researchers guess it might be because, they were facing new tools, the game, maybe the app. And also, there's often a competitive element in games, right? That could make you a bit nervous initially. Maybe it even signals more investment. It's hard to say for sure.
That makes sense. A new thing, maybe competing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how that might raise the initial nerves a bit.
But, and this is the crucial part during and after learning, that anxiety significantly dropped for both game groups. And again, no real change for the video group.
So a little more anxiety up front with the games, but then it actually went down as they got into it.
Exactly. It suggests that while these game-based approaches with support might cause some initial butterflies, they ultimately lead to less anxiety once learners get engaged and comfortable.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together then. If we synthesize everything, what are the main takeaways from this deep dive?
Well, putting it all together, you get a pretty compelling picture. Learning through games with these kinds of built-in support scaffolding, especially when you add tech like a mobile app for instant feedback, it offers a lot. You get effective learning, remember. The scores were similar to the video group in this study. But you also get strong boosts in engagement, that flow state. It lowers learning anxiety, it enhances motivation, especially during the learning, and it builds confidence while also managing to reduce that initial nervousness.
Quite a list of benefits beyond just the final test score. And wasn't there a practical point for teachers too?
Oh yes, good point. The study noted that using things like mobile apps for the instant feedback can really cut down on the teacher's workload. Automating some of that answer checking and guidance frees them up.
That's a great side benefit. Better for the student experience, potentially easier for the instructor. This has been really insightful. Definitely makes you think differently about how we learn, not just in school, but everywhere.
Absolutely. And maybe that leads to a question for you listening right now. How could you see using some of these ideas, maybe elements of games, or finding ways to get more immediate feedback in your own learning? Think about skills you're trying to build, professionally or personally, even outside a formal course.
Yeah, exactly. What part of this discussion really stood out for you? Was it the motivation boost from instant feedback? Or maybe the anxiety reduction from having support? Or just that feeling of getting lost in the task, the flow? Think about what matters most to you in your learning and how different ways of learning might affect those things. It seems pretty clear that how we learn can be just as important as what we learn.